My name is Joan McCarty, and I organized this show with Betty Myers, and we organized it because we thought it was important to organize a show for International Women's Day. We have a total of 33 artists, some well-established, some emerging artists, so it represents the diversity of artists' talents, but also we made a special effort to contact women from different backgrounds, such as Aboriginal women, women from Indonesia, and Chinese Canadian women. So we're very pleased at the range of artists, very pleased with the participation here tonight, because it's been exceptional to have this many people involved and dedicated to working together for a common cause. So I think I'll have to stop there. Thank you.
They've been here earlier with even more crowded. You could hardly move. It was packed. Whole place was packed. What a show.
About my work in the show, it is mostly concerned with what goes on in a woman's mind from the time she's born, really. And the problem with, in the early days, in the 50s and 60s, the problem for women in almost every avenue of endeavor. The wars that happened were during these times, Second World War and then the Korean War and then Vietnam, were all, I think, more of a wake-up call for women to protest more than they had before. And when I was in Kenya for the Decade for Women conference, to march with 3,000 women down the street crying, give peace a chance, was one of the most exciting times of my life. And that's when I realized that it's all over the world that women have problems. It's not just in our own little bailiwick here in Victoria. It's everywhere. So give peace a chance.
I did this painting in response to the show. My friend Betty, who organized the show, Betty Myers, asked me if I would be part of it very early. And I said yes, and she said that we were going to do paintings that were 24 by 48 inches, or there were a few other options. So I thought, okay, and then I thought, I hate all these restrictions, and did this whole thing like that. And then I started doing it, and it started working really well. And then I thought, oh, maybe I should have somebody giving me instructions all the time. So I'm very happy with the painting, and it was really fun. It was a really fun one to work on.
Okay, so we were talking about this painting, so these two women, I painted them on separate canvases during my last year of art school, so that was about 12 years ago. And so when I was invited to participate in the show, I knew I had to make something, obviously, so I went to my basement where I had a bunch of paintings stored and a bunch of odds and ends stored as well. And so anyways, I cut these two ladies out of their individual paintings, and I had this old frame from my great-grandmother's house and this piece of hard foam insulation, and I just kind of put it together. I was able to use dressmaker's pins to collage these ladies together, and I think it was just a very intuitive, by the seat of your pants kind of art making. And it was awesome the way that it all just kind of came together just from a bunch of junk that was in my basement. But so that's the story of this painting. Thank you.
So when I was invited to be in the show, the parameters of the show were to do something with a woman in it. So it took me a little while to come to the fact that I really wanted to do a piece on my grandmother. And that was mainly because I knew her only for 4.5 years of my life. Because I was born in Holland, and then we emigrated to Canada when I was 4.5. And she died about 1.5 years after we came here. She stayed in Holland, of course. And so I never saw her again. But I always had a very, very strong feeling about her. And I thought, I'm going to do a piece about my grandmother. So I went to my mom's house, and my mom, fortunately, is still alive. She's 93 now, and she has lots of old photograph albums, and I just looked through all the photograph albums. They're all very tiny pictures, and I looked and looked and looked, and I was very drawn to this photograph, which of course was very tiny. And so it just came from there, it came from just one decision after the next. And then looking at the family tree and doing a little more research online about her family, and still having that postcard from her. And also the little photograph of me, that's still in Holland. And I think one of the most interesting things in the photograph is this is my mother. And just because of her face, and it's not just a smiling portrait, you know. So I found that very interesting.
This painting behind me is my major work in the show, and it's a history of the Canadian women's movement and the curvature of the earth with the map of Canada, starting with the immigrants at the top, and then historically coming forward, World War I, World War II. We have the 20s going across here with the suffragettes, and here is this is actually in the Dust Bowl, the 30s, when volunteerism started for women. That was one of the early things that women did. If you look across here, you see some of the early occupations like nurses, teachers, then a little later the telephone operator. Then you just come forward and you see, you know, various other things represented as you come forward, up to Roberta Bonder, of course. But we also have the symbol of the bread and roses, which is a symbol of the women's movement, because we want our economic equality, which the bread represents, but we also want love, which the rose represents. So that's what I worked on. That's my major piece.